This exhibition covers primarily Chris's work from the 1970s when he began making work in the Isle of Man, and covers all through his period working in the northeast. That's Seacoast, Skinning Grove, and finishes up around the time in the years just before he went to America to teach at Harvard.
Well, Chris wasn't a photographer in any respect until he discovered Paris Match and a Cartier-Bresson photograph, as he was looking for something else entirely, cycling results for the Tour de France. And from that point, between London, the Isle of Man, and occasionally trips to America, he started his early career.
And the key thing from this exhibition that I think is important is Chris's connection to the communities he worked in. It's so important to see that he returned over and over again. His empathy for the people continued throughout his whole life, to the extent that he visited them when he came back from years later just with his wife to come and see his family.
I think it's very easy to make a connection between the work he made in the Isle of Man and Paul Strand's work from the Hebrides. Interestingly, there's something a little bit more involved about Chris's approach. Chris was using the connections and the friendships and the relationships that he had with family members and extended family and extended friends to almost be located in the project, so people were aware of who he was. John Berger was a big influence on him, even though they never actually met. But John Berger eventually wrote a short text for the Isle of Man book. Chris was very, very regularly taking tours around countries. His first trips to America, for example, were on planes where he could sleep on a plane at night and then go to the next city to see things. And he talked about making a circuit of Britain where he went up the east coast and then across just before Scotland, Berwick Tweed, comes down the west coast. It's one of the first times he saw Skinning Grove, for example, and made a note of what that place seemed to feel like for him. And one thing led to another, and he ended up staying in Gateshead, found an apartment in Gateshead, and that organic connection with the side gallery happened probably quite smoothly after that.
The side gallery still exists as one of the key galleries. They're very important to their work. They have a really extensive archive. Chris was involved in the very early days with Side Gallery when they were a collective and a cooperative, and they still work like that now. And Chris was director from 1977 for 2 years and did some really significant shows for the organisation when they were there, and again are a key part of why they're still so important.
A lot of the people who are in the photographs received copies of those, which is as it should be, but beyond all of that, some of the people in the pictures were part of the distribution process. So Beva, who's become somebody who we know from one of Chris's most significant pictures, was the distribution agent for the Skinning Grove magazines to take them back into the area. Chris's work has great significance for photography as a medium. If we think back to 1988 and In Flagrante, we think of somebody who was, with the help of Mark Holborn and the designer Peter Dyer, was actually, in some respects, challenging the orthodoxy of narrative form. I think some of the experimentation that he did in his last years with the zines, for example, you can see the energy, you can see the excitement of working with the designer Niall Sweeney and trying to figure out how can you replicate or recreate or convey the energy in a punk club. And those solutions were solved by collaborations with younger people, with younger designers. There's I suppose a consistency when people look at his work. And now we're in a time of austerity. We've probably been in a time of austerity for quite a while, but there's an absolute moment now where we're seeing people in great difficulty. And I think that's one of the reaches that the work has. People connect with those kinds of things.
There's a real draw to the work and a real draw to his connection to the people. bringing it back to that sense that the community is the real heart of the pictures and how he's reflecting the community.